I'm back! Rhodes Rants on Star Wars. If you like this video, like and subscribe. Join the Rhodes Squadron. Today, let's talk about this J.J. Abrams interview. It seems that J.J. had a few choice things to say about this whole freaking deal. Pretty eye-opening, actually. This interview was from Fast Company. I did read it yesterday, and I had a live stream last night, so I didn't have a chance to actually do a video on it. I did talk about it during the last part of the live stream. But Collider put together parts of the interview, so we're going to go over that. I don't think he's the biggest Rian Johnson fan in the world. And I'm not sure he was the biggest Kathleen Kennedy fan either. There's some tidbits that are really telling about this thing. Abrams said he turned down 9 when he was asked. I wasn't supposed to be there. I wasn't the guy, you know. I was working on some other things, and I had something else that I was assuming would be in line for the next project. And then Kathy Kennedy called and said, would you really seriously consider coming on board? Okay, I'm going to stop there and tell you that sounds like a statement of somebody that got their ass seriously chewed out. I wonder if she was not told, get JJ back or you're done. And once that started, it all happened pretty quickly. The whole thing was a crazy leap of faith, and there was an actual moment when I nearly said, no, I'm not going to do this. And his wife essentially convinced him to come back. To ask, have that happen again, I felt a little bit like I was playing with fire. Like, why go back? We managed to make it work. What the hell am I thinking? And there was a moment when I literally said no. And Katie said, you should do this. Sorry, guys. And my first thought was, has she met someone? And then I thought, she's usually right about stuff. And when she said it, I think it felt like an opportunity to bring close to a story we had begun and had continued, of course. Abrams admit a daunting task given that Episode 9 already had a release date. Quote, to have no script and to have a release date and to have it essentially a 2-year window when saying to yourself, you've got 2 years from the decision to release and you have literally done nothing. Okay, I believe this is one of the biggest problems with the whole deal. I've actually said before, I think they should have pushed Episode 9 back a year, maybe even 2 years, to make sure that they got this story and everything right. And that's been one of the problems from the beginning, was setting these release dates prior to even starting pre-production. So, you know, Hollywood's kind of doing things backwards right now. They do it with every film now. You don't have the story, you don't have the cast, you don't have the designers, the sets. There was a crew and there were things that will be worked out on the version that preceded ours, but this was starting over. He just told you Rian Johnson just flamethrowed the trilogy with his last movie. He was starting over. Abrams said that's why he turned to Oscar-winning Argo writer to write the screenplay and co-write the movie. Wow, I forgot about that. Chris Terrio did win an Oscar for Argo, a damn good movie. Quote, and because this was such a mega job, I knew very least I needed a co-writer to work with on this thing. But I didn't know who that co-writer would be. There was nothing. I reached out to a writer I had admired for years, Chris Terrio, who I really didn't know. Listen, would you write Star Wars with me? And he screamed. Yeah, I did also read where Chris Terrio was like, I mean, he could not wait to get a hold of a Star Wars project. It was sort of like in no uncertain terms, it was a lifelong dream. The Force Awakens filmmaker goes on to say another daunting challenge was picking up where Rian Johnson left off. Rian Johnson. It was a completely unknown scenario. I had some gut instincts about where the story would have gone. But without getting into the weeds on episode 8, he is telling you right there. Without just completely destroying Rian Johnson and what he did in 8, he just used some political code words. But without getting into the weeds on episode 8, that was a story that Ryan wrote and was telling based on 7 before we met. Another failure. So he was taking the thing in another direction. So we had to respond. More political code for fuck you, Rian Johnson. We had to respond to episode 8. So our movie was not just following what we had started, it was following what we started and what had been advanced by somebody else. On top of that, Abrams reiterated what everyone's been saying about episode 9 and that it closes the entire Skywalker saga. So there was that, and finally it was resolving 9 movies. While there were some threads of larger ideas and some big picture things that had been conceived decades ago, a lot of ideas that Lawrence Kasdan and I had when we were doing episode 7. The lack of absolute inevitability, the lack of complete structure for this thing, given the way it was being run, was an enormous challenge. He just told you, given the way it was being run was an enormous challenge. He just said, this whole Lucasfilm thing is a fucking dumpster fire. He's telling you, it's chaotic. Now that post-production and Abrams is back in the Bad Robot offices, the director says he thinks they pulled it all off. Yes, I had heard months ago that JJ had not been working out of Lucasfilm for this movie, hence full creative control. He was working out of Bad Robot only. Okay, so no Kathleen Kennedy in his ear, no Carrie Hart, who, of course, 3 or 4 months ago left the company. I believe she left the company in part because of J.J. Abrams in episode 9. I think she was probably pissed that she didn't have any creative say in the movie after she had so much say in episode 8. Strangely, we were sort of relentless and almost unbearably disciplined. I really like that. About the story and forcing ourselves to question and answer some fundamental things that at the beginning I had absolutely no clue about how to begin to address. He just told you, Rian Johnson dumpster fired the thing, and he was having to figure out how to try to fix that. I feel we have gotten to a place without jinxing anything or sounding more confident than I deserve to be. I feel like we've gotten to a place where we have something incredibly special. So I feel relief being home, and I feel gratitude that I've got to do it. And more than anything, I'm excited about what I think we have. Okay, so there we go. What do we think about this Rogue Squadron? I do like The Force Awakens. I know a lot of people hate the fact that I like The Force Awakens. I don't care. I think Han Solo had a fantastic arc in that movie, and a lot of that is because JJ reached out to Lawrence Kasdan, who George Lucas several times admitted Lawrence Kasdan is Han's character, really. And he knows that character, and I love the arc of Han in that movie. I love the aesthetics of that movie. I have said The Last Jedi didn't look or feel like a Star Wars movie. The Force Awakens did. I don't care if it's a light reboot of Star Wars A New Hope. In my opinion, it almost had to be to relaunch the franchise. There are glaring issues, particularly at the end of the movie, where I would have loved to have seen Luke come back and bail Rey out during the lightsaber fight with Kylo, essentially saving her life and getting her out of there, and her admitting defeat. That is a big moment in the trilogy that JJ should have done better with. But overall, I really like the movie, and that's why I do have some hope for Episode 9. I don't think he can fix this. Even with Chris Terrio, an Oscar-winning writer, Argo was fantastic. I don't think he can fix this. There is too much that Rian Johnson did, and he just told you this. I knew this was coming at some point. I thought it would be after the release of 9. Regardless of how anybody wants to spin this, J.J. Abrams just threw Rian Johnson under the fucking bus and ran him over. And went over him and backed over him and went back over him again before driving off. He told you, how are we going to fix this without going into the weeds? In other words, without wading into Rian Johnson's heap of shit he left me to walk in. I had heard that J.J. Abrams came back specifically because he didn't want this thing fucked up any more than Rian Johnson made it. Okay? It was taken in a whole nother direction. So JJ I had heard he had a script for 8. And he definitely had a overall story arc that him and Lawrence Kasdan had created for all 3 movies. And Rian Johnson threw it out with the approval of Kathleen Kennedy and Carrie Hart. A failure of monumental fucking proportions. You tell me what you think in the comments section below, Road Squadron. Let me know. What I am left with Episode 9 is I've got a director that I have always liked his work, either as a director, producer. So that does give me some hope. But unfortunately, what I've really got is morbid curiosity. I do not think he can fix this, okay? And it is in small part due to him, okay? He did mess the ending of The Force Awakens up. Not with Han's death, but with Rey's character in that snow scene with the lightsaber. Her character should have failed, and Kylo's character should have been elevated at that moment to a complete dark side monster. And instead, he was still pouty face, and then Rian Johnson made him even more of an emo pouty face. Millennial that can't get out of his own way. Peace, I'm out. Till next